When a woman loses a man who once gave her everything, his time, his heart, his peace, she doesn't realize what she had until the silence starts speaking louder than his words. Watch this till the end to understand why she starts missing the man she took for granted. Comment where you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe for more real talk from Jessica Opare. You see, most women don't realize the true weight of a man's presence until it's gone. When a man is consistent, reliable, and emotionally available, his energy becomes part of her everyday life, so naturally embedded that she forgets how much of her stability depends on it. He checks in, listens, cares, makes her feel safe, and offers comfort in moments she didn't even know she needed saving from. But human psychology is strange. What's constant often becomes invisible. We stop valuing what we think will always be there. In the beginning, she might even mistake his kindness for weakness. His patience feels like passivity. His understanding seems like overinvestment. She assumes his love will remain, regardless of how she treats it, because that's how it's always been. But that's the thing about good men. They don't make noise about their worth. They simply show it through actions. And that's exactly why they're often taken for granted. Their love feels effortless, their presence too predictable. Then something happens. He starts pulling away, not with loud announcements or dramatic exits, but with quiet detachment. He stops calling as often. The long texts turn short. The concern becomes polite distance. And at first, she doesn't panic. She assumes he'll come back, like he always does. But this time, he doesn't. Because when a man reaches that point of emotional exhaustion, when he realizes his effort has become expected rather than appreciated, he begins to withdraw, not out of anger, but out of self-respect. And that's when the shift begins in her mind. The silence that once felt comfortable starts to echo. The absence that once felt freeing now feels heavy. She begins to notice the small things missing. No one checks in on her during her bad days. No one truly listens without judgment. No one gives that calm reassurance she used to feel in his presence. It's not just him she misses. It's who she was when she was with him. The security, the ease, the silent certainty that someone had her back no matter what. Psychologically, this moment of realization often hits when she experiences contrast. Maybe she meets other men, colder, less patient, more self-centered, and suddenly she sees how rare that gentle strength truly was. Or maybe she's just sitting alone one night, scrolling through her phone, and finds an old message from him. Something simple, something kind, and it hits her how naturally he gave what she never valued enough to protect. This isn't about guilt or punishment. It's about awakening. Human beings, by nature, often learn value through loss. What was once ordinary becomes extraordinary only when it's no longer available. And for a woman who took a good man for granted, that realization comes like a quiet storm. Not loud, not sudden, but deep. It builds slowly in moments of nostalgia, regret, and what-ifs. She starts to replay their conversations, the times he tried to explain how he felt, the moments he asked for effort, and she brushed it off. And then she begins to see, it wasn't that he stopped caring, it's that she stopped noticing. His withdrawal wasn't an act of punishment, it was a mirror reflecting her neglect. And in that reflection, she finally sees the truth. Love is not infinite when it's one-sided. What's fascinating about this stage is how memory becomes selective. The mind starts filtering out the conflicts, the small annoyances, the small annoyances. What remains are the moments of peace, laughter, affection, the emotional fingerprints he left behind. That's why missing him isn't just about wanting him back. It's about longing for the emotional balance he brought into her world, the quiet reassurance that she once had something solid and real. And yet, this realization usually comes too late, because by the time she sees his absence for what it is, a loss, he's already in a different space. He's no longer the man waiting for her validation. He's evolved. He's redirected his focus. And that's what deepens her longing. The same presence she once overlooked has now become unattainable. And that scarcity fuels desire in ways nothing else can. From a psychological standpoint, absence creates meaning. It redefines value by forcing recognition. When something is constantly available, the brain perceives it as low urgency. But when it's gone, it triggers a scarcity response. That same mechanism that drives us to want what we can no longer reach. In relationships, that's exactly how emotional regret. But in exactly how emotional regret takes form. She doesn't just miss him. She misses the safety of being loved by someone who expected nothing but sincerity in return. It's ironic, isn't it? The man who once begged for her attention is now the one she can't stop thinking about. The dynamic reverses completely. His silence becomes his power. His absence becomes her mirror. And through that mirror, she learns one of life's most powerful lessons. That consistency is not boring. That stability is not weakness. And that a man who genuinely cares is not to be underestimated. Because once a woman loses the man who truly loved her, not for her image, not for her body, but for her essence, every other connection feels temporary. Every interaction feels shallow. And though she may never say it out loud, in her quiet moments, she knows she lost someone irreplaceable. So if you're that man, listening right now, wondering whether walking away was the right choice, understand this. Sometimes your absence teaches the lesson your presence never could, and that lesson, once learned, echoes forever. After the silence sets in and his absence becomes real, something starts to shift deep within her emotional world. At first, she tells herself she's fine. She repeats it like a mantra. I'm okay. I'm better off. I needed space. But the truth is, that's the first stage of denial. It's not that she doesn't care. It's that she's trying to convince herself she doesn't. Because admitting that she misses him would mean confronting the part of her that once took him for granted. And that's painful. In this phase, she becomes emotionally defensive. She distracts herself, new conversations, new people, maybe even new relationships. Anything to fill the silence. But what she doesn't realize is that distraction isn't healing. It's avoidance. She's trying to escape the emptiness left behind by a man who once gave her emotional security. But the mind has a way of circling back to what it hasn't resolved. That's why, even in moments of distraction, his memory sneaks in. A song they used to share, a phrase he often said, or a place that reminds her of his presence. Suddenly, the past doesn't feel so distant anymore. Then comes curiosity. This is when she starts to wonder, what's he doing now? Does he still think about me? Has he moved on? That curiosity is the beginning of emotional realization. She might check his social media, not out of malice, but out of longing for familiarity. The man she once overlooked suddenly becomes a mystery again. His silence, once dismissed as detachment, now feels powerful. The same man she once thought she had figured out now intrigues her in ways she didn't expect. Because in her mind, he's no longer predictable. He's evolving without her, and that shift unsettles her sense of control. And when she sees him thriving, focused, peaceful, even happy, something inside her stirs. That's when regret begins to take root. It's not just jealousy. It's the dawning realization that she may have been the reason for the distance. Regret, psychologically speaking, is one of the most profound emotional experiences because it combines memory, guilt, and longing into a single ache. She starts to remember how he made her feel safe, how he listened, how he stayed when others walked away. And as she remembers, she begins to compare. Every new man she meets is subconsciously measured against that standard. His patience, his attentiveness, his emotional intelligence, and often they fall short. What's powerful here is that she's not just missing him. She's missing the version of herself that existed when she was loved by him. That woman who could laugh freely, speak vulnerably, and feel completely seen. That emotional chemistry, once dismissed as ordinary, now becomes something she can't recreate elsewhere. This is the stage where emotional echoes begin to form, fragments of the past replaying in her mind like a haunting melody she can't turn off. These echoes aren't random. They are the mind's way of seeking emotional closure. Because when something ends abruptly or without proper appreciation, the psyche keeps trying to rewrite it. That's why she revisits old messages or conversations, trying to find meaning in his words. She's not just reminiscing. She's searching for understanding, for the moment when things started slipping away. In that process, she starts to see the truth she once ignored. He wasn't asking for perfection, only effort. And that's what she never gave enough of. Then comes acceptance, but not the peaceful kind. It's the quiet, painful realization that he's no longer emotionally accessible. She may reach out, test the waters, or drop hints, but something feels different now. His tone is calm, distant, detached. Not angry, just resolved, and that composure is what shakes her most, because it tells her he's truly moved on, and she no longer has emotional influence over him. That's when missing him turns into mourning, not just for him, but for the bond she destroyed through neglect. It's fascinating how the human mind works. We crave emotional connection, but we often sabotage it when it feels too certain. Certainty feels safe, but it also feels predictable, and predictability breeds complacency. It's only when the predictable becomes unavailable that we suddenly recognize its worth. That's why she starts missing him most when he no longer needs her validation. His peace without her becomes a reminder of the chaos she created within herself. And in the quiet of her own thoughts, she begins to understand the difference between attention and affection. Attention can be replaced, affection cannot. Attention is momentary, affection is memory. The way he looked at her, the way he spoke her name, the way he cared even when she was unkind. Those are things no new man can replicate. They were uniquely his. And the deeper she reflects, the more she realizes that what she lost wasn't just a man. It was emotional depth, loyalty, and authenticity. At this point, she may tell herself, if I could go back, I'd do it differently. But life doesn't offer rewinds, only lessons. And the lesson here is profound. Never confuse consistency with weakness, and never assume love will wait forever, because love, even when patient, grows tired of not being seen. When a woman starts missing the man she took for granted, it's not a random emotional phase. It's an awakening, a confrontation with her own reflection. She finally sees that he wasn't enough. It's that she couldn't recognize enough when it was right in front of her. And so she learns, painfully, silently, but truthfully, that sometimes the hardest part of losing someone isn't that they're gone. It's realizing they'll never come back the same way again. And this is where everything changes. Because the moment a man truly lets go, the energy shifts entirely. The same man who once waited for her replies, who once overthought every small thing she said, suddenly becomes calm, grounded, and focused. He stops reacting, stops chasing, and begins to rebuild his life. Not to prove her wrong, but to reclaim himself. And that transformation, that's what she starts to feel. That's when missing him turns into longing, and longing turns into regret. When a man detaches emotionally, it's not immediate. It's the result of exhaustion, of giving love that wasn't returned, of showing care that went unnoticed, of being patient with someone who thought his presence was guaranteed. But once that emotional cord is cut, something powerful happens within him. He starts pouring all that energy, the love, the attention, the effort, back into himself. He begins to rediscover his value independent of her validation. He starts dressing better, thinking clearer, building goals, setting boundaries, and prioritizing peace over approval. And that's when she sees it. The man she once knew, the one who seemed so emotionally available, is no longer the same. What's fascinating from a psychological perspective is how attraction often reignites when the dynamic of control reverses. When she realizes she no longer has emotional influence over him, the curiosity returns. But this time, it's mixed with admiration and confusion. She starts wondering, how did he change so much? Why does he seem happier without me? Was I really the problem? And those questions begin to echo inside her, slowly breaking through the pride that once blinded her to his worth. Because women, like men, are deeply responsive to emotional energy. They may not always articulate it, but they feel it. And when a man moves from neediness to confidence, from attachment to purpose, from pain to peace, that shift in energy is magnetic. It's not about revenge, it's about evolution. He's no longer seeking love, he's becoming love. He's no longer chasing validation, he's radiating self-respect. And that, more than anything, triggers something in her subconscious. The awareness that she lost him, not because he stopped loving her, but because he finally started loving himself more. Now imagine she sees him somewhere, maybe in person, maybe online. His posture is relaxed, his eyes no longer searching for her reaction. He laughs differently, not to impress, but because he's genuinely at peace. He looks centered, present, alive. And in that moment, she realizes something profound. She doesn't recognize this version of him. He's no longer the man she had power over. He's grown into someone who can no longer be emotionally manipulated, and that realization unsettles her more than she'll ever admit. This is where female psychology works in paradoxes. The very traits she once dismissed, his gentleness, his consistency, his loyalty, now become the qualities she craves. The irony is that she didn't fall for a new man. She fell for the new version of the same man she once undervalued. The difference now is that he's unattainable, and human nature desires what it cannot easily reach. His boundaries become attractive. His indifference becomes mysterious. His silence becomes powerful, because now he embodies something she didn't expect: emotional independence. Men who reach this stage don't just move on, they transform. And this transformation is not about external validation. It's internal realignment. He no longer defines himself through her acceptance. He stops asking, "What did I do wrong?" and starts asking, "What do I deserve next?" That mindset changes everything. It shifts the emotional balance, not just in relationships, but in life. When a man stops begging to be understood and starts focusing on understanding himself, he becomes unstoppable, and that's when she begins to truly miss him. Not because of nostalgia, but because of recognition. She recognizes the man he always was, strong, loving, capable, but now without the fragility of seeking her approval. She sees the version of him she could have had, and that realization is what keeps her up at night, because there's nothing more haunting than watching someone you took for granted become everything you once hoped they'd be, just without you. From a philosophical perspective, this is the essence of human growth. Pain becomes the catalyst for power. Rejection becomes redirection. Love lost becomes self-worth gained. Every time he chooses peace over attention, discipline over distraction, and growth over grudges, he not only reclaims his dignity, but also his identity. And that's when the tables turn, because the woman who once made him question his worth now becomes a reminder of how far he's come. It's important to understand that this isn't about punishment or pride. It's about evolution. A man who rebuilds himself after being taken for granted becomes emotionally untouchable. He learns that validation from others can never replace validation from within. He realizes that the right woman will recognize his value the first time and won't make him earn love through pain. That awareness becomes his strength, and so she watches from afar, quietly, maybe even silently supporting his growth, because deep down she knows he's not coming back, not because he hates her, but because he's outgrown the version of himself that needed her approval to feel whole. That's the kind of growth no apology can undo. So, when women start missing the man they once took for granted, it's rarely about him. It's about what he represents: peace, maturity, self-mastery. They miss the stability they dismissed, the loyalty they overlooked, and the love they couldn't handle. Because once a man transforms from needing her to knowing himself, he becomes the kind of man every woman notices, and the kind she can no longer have. And that's the ultimate truth. When you stop chasing what devalues you and start becoming what inspires respect, you shift from being forgotten to being unforgettable.